Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Illustration Masterclass. Like I said, I'm going to be doing these more regularly now that I'm back onto these. And today we're looking at Jim Murray. Real quick, just to do some housekeeping, I'm going to be having some exclusive stuff go up on Patreon, as well as some more in-depth tutorials that I'm going to put up on Gumroad. So if you're interested in supporting what it is that I do here on this channel, or you'd like to see about some of the exclusive stuff I have, then check out the links down in the description below. And you can also check out my own art, my own illustrations that I sell prints of, t-shirts and stuff like that. You can check all that out in the description below as well. So let's go ahead and let's get to it. So Jim Murray is, he's probably one of my favorite illustrators. I mean, the guy's done like a ton of stuff. I believe he's done I know he's done comics, he's done stuff for games as well. But this guy is a total wizard for being able to do the stuff that he does traditionally. You know, I think most of the stuff he does is traditional. Although I think later on he did get into doing digital, but you can see here that we've got like a little bit of marks from the traditional paint. To see something like this and to know that it's traditional, to me, it just really blows me away. But I'm going to kind of go through a few different pieces that kind of have similar things going on with them, because I think it will help better illustrate some of the principles that these artists are using. And I think it helps us to understand kind of the way an artist works, their style, the creative decisions that they can end up making, and help us break it down into more of what is that creative decision that is making their work look so good. So what I think he does very well is he does this kind of dynamic shapes. He does this dynamic flow. And if you look at these two images, I mean, in a lot of ways, they're very similar to one another. You know, you have this figure kind of almost it feels like the gesture is almost falling backwards, right? From the left to the right. And then we have like this cool cape thing going on here that's creating this nice shadow, this kind of like nice collection of shadows that are all kind of pointing up to the figure, right? They're helping us connect the figure's silhouette with the rest of the illustration. And so he does this thing, and you can see it here in the hair, you can see it in this guy's crown, that is what you would call dynamic. Well, you can look up, if you look up on YouTube, if you look up force drawing, you can find a guy who teaches this specifically, but this is something it is that you would really want to focus your attention on if you want to be able to draw, super dynamic people like Jim is doing here, right? And essentially the principle that he's using is this idea that if you have one curve going here, and the next curve that's going up is going to be going kind of in an opposite direction, right? And it's basically a collection of curves and straights. And so if you look at a lot of stuff, you'll see there's this kind of balance between curve and a straight, right? And this curve and straights, if you think about the way it is that you draw, like, say, the leg, right? Like you can have this kind of thing going on, right? So you have this curve, and then this curve goes inwards here, and then it goes over here, right? Whereas this is much more of a straight, right? And so if I just go back just a little bit without drawing those lines over it, you can see that it has a little bit more of a design to it. It doesn't feel as stiff as some of the typically what it is that I see with a beginning artist who's drawing anatomy for the first time, right? Even with the head, when you think about the head, you've kind of got this brow line, and then you've kind of got these cheekbones that are going around, and you're creating this kind of rhythm that is using curves and straights as a way to communicate the form, right? So we'll go and we'll look for that in his drawings. We'll see that he uses this repeatedly. Let me get rid of this layer. Let's go back and let's look at these two pieces again. All right. So if I was to draw the different ways in which it is that I see this or make note of this, which is just one of the things it is that he's a master at, right? I mean, he's obviously a master at color. You know, he's got different levels of blue going on here, right? And then he's contrasting it with this green and with this very warm skin tones here. But if I'm just thinking about it in terms of the gesture, you know, I can see he's got a very strong gesture back here with this arm. And notice that this arm feels very much like a straight, whereas this has much of a curve, right? I feel like this has got a nice little curve going with it, right? And he's got the butt going out, and then he's got it going downwards, right? Now with the chest here, I guess you could say that in a lot of ways this is also a curve. But even when I look at the curve, so if I draw over this, and I see the dimensions here. And again, we could do the same thing over here. You know, we have this very arched back and this, I would imagine it would be a very straight chest, right? We can kind of start to see how he's able to organize these different forms, right? So this is very much just a quick sketch. But if I remove these images, especially on this one is kind of a crap sketch. Doesn't really, the image is really not that clear enough for me to draw over it. But you can see the dynamic form that's going on here. And you can see how it is that it just feels so alive with just a few lines. Like, these are not that many lines that he had to put together. So let's look at some of these other ones, right? So again, we kind of have this flow. He has this nice flow going with it. And he has a curve going this way. He has a curve going that way. And then he's going up. And then even here, he's got this overlap going. He's got one arm this way, and then he's got another arm going up, right? And a curve here. And there's kind of like this curve to the spine that goes up to the head, right? So it's almost like we have these series of curving arrows that are all kind of pointing us upwards to the figure's head, right? And of course, where he wants us to look, what are we going to see? We're going to see the highest amount of contrast. So if we start thinking about and we start looking at all the other elements of an illustration, which is composition. This, what I'm displaying here, would be an element of composition and be an element of gesture. But if we think about it in terms of contrast, where do we see the most amount of contrast? We see it here, right? We see all these little shapes. We see little shapes next to these medium-sized shapes on this armor here. Right, this coral armor looks really cool. But then we also have this strong contrast element of this black shape that's right here. And you see how it's pushing forward this kind of this fin goatee that he has on this figure, and the way it is that it's connecting with this shadow over here, and the way that it's connecting with this shadow over here. And so all the shadow on this side is pushing forward this side of the face. And notice again, if we zoom in, we can see that this is where we get the most amount of color variation, or the most amount of shadow variation, right? There's light, and then there's dark, medium, then there's dark, dark, right? And so he's using all that to describe he's using all that to describe the different forms and to help push that forward, right? This one is brutal. This is such a good illustration, right? I almost feel like I want to take this and I want to drop it into black and white so we can see something a little bit better, right? All right, so look at it in color. It's so incredible, right? Like we can see so much going on here, in so many different ways in which it is that he uses color in a way that, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of Bisley, or it reminds me of Frazetta, right? He's got this really nice classic. He's got a classic master style of painting these colors with this undercolor here. You know, he's got this undercolor of this orange. I mean, it really doesn't even make sense. It's not like there's any red light, but it's the environment, right? The environment back here is very red, and so he's bringing that into the shadow, right? So he has this main shadow, and he has that in a very dark color, and then he brings in this red, right? Which is pretty strong. I mean, it's kind of crazy because green and red typically, in my opinion, they're not the best contrasting colors. A lot of the times they don't really look that good, but he pulls it off really well here. He does a really good job of it. And then he has this contrast of yellow and orange. Yellow and blue over here on the left with this figure. And then we kind of see a variation of that over on the other side. But if we look at it in terms of gesture, we see a lot of different things, right? So one of the things it is that Frazetta was the king of, which, you know, all these guys were obviously students of. He was the king of creating like a dramatic story moment, right? And so typically whenever you think of a story moment that you're going to illustrate, typically what you want to do is you want to illustrate the moment right before something happens or right after something happens. But he's doing something in the moment of it happening, right? He's ripping these two guys as pieces. And it creates this really dynamic feel to it. I mean, it feels very much like a comic book, right? But when I look at this in terms of just the gesture, right? There's a gesture of going up here, right? And there's a gesture going down like that, right? And notice how all of the elements on either side are helping us connect with that line of action, right? It's like we have a line of action that's going down here, and notice that the arm here, the way this is angled, from the arm all the way over here, and the way it is that this arm is angled with the hammer, with the leg, you can see that it's all lined up. And where is it pointing us to? It's pointing us to this focal point of the face, right? Same thing over here. We have this going up. We have this going up, right? We have the general gesture of the body. Well, the gesture of the body kind of does something like this, actually. But I think because of the arm and the way it lines up with this sword that he's gutting this guy with, you can't really tell, right? Like it's kind of falling back that way a little bit, but not really. So everything in this illustration, just to again simplify it, if you just look at the general gesture of the figure, it's all lining up to keep us within the shot instead of pointing us off of the page, right? He's not pointing somewhere over there, right? Even if you think about these blades, the general gesture of it is going here. The general gesture of this is going here, right? And it's creating, if you think about it like this, Notice, look at the way it is that everything meets in a kind of a circular pattern, right? All of the major points of interest are going to fall within basically this circular pattern. You know, you can almost think of it like this is like some sort of a train track and that you're trying to run the viewer's eye around. And as you run the viewer's eye around it, they're going to collect different pieces of information that's going to help them see the story. But you want it to be immediate. You know, you don't want some major detail of something over here. You know, he wouldn't take the hammer and throw it over here, because if you threw the hammer over here in this corner, then it would just be completely out of place and your eye would immediately go there because it would be totally out of place. It wouldn't be a part of the rest of the illustration, right? So this is the sort of thing it is that these guys are thinking about. All right, so I think I got one more. Yeah, actually I got two more. So I'm not going to go through and break these down. I'm going to keep this video pretty short and quick. But if you're somebody who's interested in learning about composition, if you're interested in learning about how can you take these guys' work and break it down and understand it and absorb the understanding that they have, then I would really suggest doing some master studies of these guys. I would say bring them into Photoshop or Procreate or whatever it is that you use, and go ahead and draw yourself a little, and one thing you can do is you can drop it into black and white, right? You can drop it into black and white. And, you know, draw yourself a little thumbnail. I'm just doing this very quickly. I'll make another video about this separately if people really want to see this. But then I would actually just sit here and I would sketch out exactly what it is that this guy drew, right? Like I said, I'm just very vaguely putting it here. And I would try to make this copy look as exact as I possibly could, with just maybe three values. And try to make everything pretty much fit the same size, but try to keep it just to 3 values of light, medium, and dark. And that's going to force you to understand how to simplify. It's going to force you to understand how to arrange values, but you're also going to start to pick up on all the different little techniques and things it is that people do in their illustrations in order to be able to tell a really effective story and to make all the composition fit. Because you'll see that a lot of these guys, they're using very similar vocabularies of the way that they do their illustration, right? So that's what I got for you guys. Like I mentioned, if you want to support what I do on this channel, then you can check out my Patreon. I'm basically putting together a group of different people, whether they're artists or game developers, musicians, filmmakers, different people that want to grow not only in their artistic understanding as far as the technical abilities, but also in the spiritual aspect of art, which is something that I talk about here in terms of creativity. So you can check out those videos that I have on creativity on this channel. And then I've got some exclusive videos on Patreon. And like I said, I'll have some more in-depth tutorials coming up that I'll probably put on Gumroad or something. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching this. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, let me know what you think, and take care.